Almost.
Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Saw Kenneth Lonergan at an opera once, and he during intermission ran out and was like, "I need a pen and a piece of paper." So it was clearly something was yeah.
I have an idea. I'm gonna make it in 10 years. Yeah.
It's funny. A friend of mine who I haven't talked to in a while actually reached out to me and was like, "Yo, Charlie, what's your favorite movie?" And I'm like, "Mulholland Drive." And he's like, "No, isn't there one where a lady kills someone by accident?" I was just like, "You mean Margaret?"
That's funny.
So random.
Only movie that's ever happened. Then it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were Randy in Scream, where she's like, "Where's the one where E.T.'s mom and a werewolf?" And you were just like, "Oh, Margaret." Yeah.
That's also the plot of Margaret. Most people don't realize that.
That is true.
That's the extended Lonergan cut.
Now I'm just imagining a version of Margaret where instead of Allison Janney, the bus hits E.T.
Margaret, but dots between E and T at the end.
It's just E.T.'s got a foot missing and is just phone home, and their pack was just soaked in blood, just being like, "You're gonna be fine, just hang on."
Matt Damon shows up for some reason. But yeah, let's talk about dark comedies. Our favorite dark comedies. Why do people not do dark comedies particularly well, like in Novocaine? Because I feel like in this movie and a lot of movies, the dark comedy is just oh, it's a comedy, but also everybody is horrible to each other, and then there's violence for no reason. And it's that's a dark comedy. What are you going to do about it? Do I be really obnoxiously heterosexual and talk about Fight Club? No, I don't think right now.
I mean, Fight Club's hilarious. I'm gay and I love that movie.
I know. It's
that. I believe that was on the poster.
I'm gay and I love this movie. Dash Charlie Nash.
Yeah, what are some good examples of dark comedy and when it's done well?
It's funny because we just talked about Chuck and Buck on our previous episode, but I go to Todd Solondz's Happiness, which, like Chuck and Buck, is very much...
Is that the darkest comedy ever?
Possibly. I mean, I've loved that movie since high school, but like Chuck and Buck, it's not making fun of the pain that they feel as a result of their sexual frustration. It's just kind of examining sexual frustration as awkward and cringy, and especially with the character played by Dylan. I'm forgetting his last name.
Dylan Baker.
Dylan Baker
with the pedophile stuff. I mean, it's actually a very empathetic look at pedophilia because he knows he's sick and he knows that it's wrong, but he can't help his urges. And I remember I wrote a 10-page paper for this in an American film comedy class because I love this movie so much, and I nearly had a panic attack on the ride to my class, thinking, is my professor going to think I'm saying pedophilia is hilarious? I was just and I got an A on it, but I did have a moment where I was just oh God, this could be why did I think this would be an okay gamble? And it did pay off, but I mean,
right? Because in the end, your professor was like, "Pedophilia is hilarious."
Yes, so that was exactly what that was the only note that I got. Yeah.
He's like, "You're correct."
The notes online just says "very interesting paper," and you're like, that can mean anything.
and it's also funny because I've shown that movie to friends and they've thought it's great, and again very sad as well, which adds to what makes it so funny. There was also a moment where I brought a bunch of movies home when I was home from winter break for college, and I went out bowling with some friends, and my parents were like, "What should we watch?" And I was just like, "Oh, just pick something from my pile." I did not know Happiness was in it. And they looked up in the Leonard Maltin book that was on our coffee table. He gave it 3.5 stars, said nothing about the content, and I come home, and it's the scene where Philip Seymour Hoffman's being told by that woman eating strawberry ice cream that she was assaulted, and she broke the guy's neck, and my parents were just slack-jawed, and I was just like, wow. oh, you're watching Happiness, and my mom points to the TV and goes, is this supposed to be funny? And I went, I mean, yeah.
Kinda. Mom, if it makes you feel any better, this movie is 2.5 hours long, so you got a while to go. Yeah.
But the Laura Flynn
long story short, you're definitely on a list somewhere now, Charlie, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But
that movie, really quick, that movie is like what you're saying, like it's empathizing, but all of this, it makes you as an audience member laugh, and then like in the same scene be like, why are you laughing at this? And then another beat is just like, no wait, it's funny.
Oh yeah.
But why are you laughing about it? And it's like it's really hard to just describe that movie. Like I went in and thought it would be like an abominable like this and that, and I watch it and I'm just like, I don't think you can explain this movie to people and they'd be like, oh, okay, it's like funny, but it's about these stuff, but are not funny. But
if you explain this movie to people in 2022, they think you're like, they think you're sick. Like, I mean, the moment that I always think of it as so funny is when Philip Seymour Hoffman is, you know, prank calling people saying like, I'm going to fuck you so hard, you're going to come out of your ears. And he calls Laura Flynn Boyle when she's having like a breakdown. And then she calls back and was just like, who are you? And he hangs up the phone, and then she calls back, and he's like, what do you want? Well, I want you to fuck me. And he's just like, and he's at his job, and he's just like, I don't think I can right now. Like, it's just so sad. It's just the sadness and the patheticness of, like, he, you know, like, he wants so badly to be sexually confident, and she feels like she needs, like, some sort of, like, punishment for being a fraudulent writer. Like, it all deals with internalized anxieties and feelings of inferiority complexes that are very touchy, very sensitive subjects, but that's what makes it so great, is because few films are that brave to be that provocative. But I feel like I've been talking about it for a while, so I'll...
No, I just recently was thinking about it because I reread Down and Dirty Pictures, which is the best book ever, and it's a part talking about happiness where I forget who was gonna, it's a Killer Films, but I think Universal was eventually going to put it out, and then they were just like, we can't put this, you can't even edit this movie that we would put this out, this is like ridiculous, and it would get an NC-17, we can't put out a movie that's NC-17. And then somebody was like, y'all invented NC-17 to put out Henry and June, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, if you haven't read Down and Dirty Pictures, it's all about indie film of the 90s, and it's fucking fascinating. Yeah, Bryden, do you have a example of good or bad black comedy?
I'll briefly mention like one that I think is like kind of unfairly maligned. I think I'm like one of the few people who likes Lucky Numbers, the Nora Ephron movie with John Travolta and Lisa Kudrow. I like that one actually like a fair amount. It's definitely like imperfect, but I do like how I don't know. I just like how it is kind of like a funny outlier in Efron's career, which like, you know, those movies are like, you know, pretty like sweet and uplifting, and they're like, that movie, like the characters are like unapologetically nasty, and like even the characters who are not bad, they're like just like unbelievably stupid, and that kind of like allows the like the cruelty to sort of like run rampant, and really good. That's like a movie with like a really good supporting cast. But I don't know. I kind of have like a soft spot for that movie. I think partly because people just hate it so much.
It's not boring. I was not bored the entire time. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But for a really good example of a dark comedy, I was looking just through some of my favorites. Modern Romance by Albert Brooks, I think is like absolutely fantastic.
I need to watch it.
Yeah, I need to see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just like brutally uncomfortable because like Brooks is just like a guy who like fucks up his relationship and then like realizes he messed it up and then like halfway through the movie he gets his girlfriend back, but he just proceeds to fuck it all up again, and it's just like in ways that like are, it's like kind of like the comedy that like it's like cringe comedy where you're like, well, this is like maybe stuff that like you can understand like thinking about it, but like if you did any of this you'd be like a psychopath or whatever, but like but because it's a movie, it's just like him doing and saying every like thing that like you shouldn't do in a relationship, and it's really funny, and Brooks just like doesn't have like any vanity about making his character unlikable, which makes it funnier. And really there's also a really good subplot in that movie about film editing, because he's helping this director make a sci-fi movie, and James L. Brooks plays the director of the sci-fi film, and there's a really great scene where they're trying to get like the right sound effects for someone running across a spaceship, and them like trying to like frantically find the right sound effects is it's very amusing, and like I imagine because it's made by filmmakers, it'd be funny to know how accurate the behind the scenes stuff is. But yeah, that's a really good one. I would highly recommend.
One that I recently watched is The House of Yes, the Mark Waters Parker Posey movie. That's really good stuff. Freddie Prinze Jr. maybe his best performance, just utilizing his his jock dude is just the best way possible. It reminds me of what's his name, who played Oz in American Pie when he was in Election. Just like you, Chris Klein.
Klein, there you go.
Yeah, where it's just like you have one mode, but we're going to utilize it in the best way possible in Election. So that's how I feel about him in House of Yes, and also on the Todd Solange tip, Welcome to the Dollhouse. Also, just so good. Gavin.
Just very briefly, in Bruges. In Bruges is
right.
great.
Yeah.
Because they're just such flawed people, and it's lovely to watch. Scorsese's After Hours, I've always had a soft spot for.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know it's like much more fantastical, but like I love everything about New York in that time period. And also and we talked about this in our Catherine O'Hara episode, but I think the thing that's the most shocking in After Hours is how non-judgmental it is. There's that great scene where he's having a conversation in a bar, and the only other people in the bar are two Leathermen who are just making out in the background. And the joke is not about like, oh, it's uncomfortable to watch two guys kiss. It's just a matter of fact of what's happening in that bar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like it's 4 a.m. I need to get home because this is the stuff that's happening. I just want my bed. Yeah, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then to like go even further into like classics, I don't think anybody's ever accomplished dark comedies as well as Ealing Studios in the 40s, and Kind Hearts and Cornets is like maybe the tip of that, which is about a family of people all played by Alec Guinness, including the women, who this one guy is just consistently knocking off so he can get this inheritance. And it's brilliant. I think Alec Guinness plays 9 different members of this family at different points in the film. It's a lot of fun.
Was it it made you I just added it to my watch list because I'm actually not familiar with this, but that also sounded kind of like, was this film an influence for A New Leaf, the Elaine May film, do you think?
Oh, it might be. I am woefully under exposed when it comes to Elaine May, and I should correct that at some point. My boyfriend just recently watched A New Leaf, and I did not watch it with him because I was doing something else at the time.
A New Leaf and Heartbreak Kid and even Ishtar. I mean, Ishtar's not so much a black comedy, but Heartbreak Kid and A New Leaf I would also classify as like perfect dark cringe comedy. Like Heartbreak Kid is like,
he plays the most just that's so good.
Yeah.
One that doesn't really get talked about as much, but it's also just such a product of the 90s. The Cable Guy is like really good. Like I really like The Cable Guy.
Oh yeah. No, I genuinely think that might be one of, I mean, I don't remember our Jim Carrey episode of the mixed reviews because I blocked most of it out because it was miserable. But I think Cable Guy is one of my favorite Carrey performances.
I love the Janine Garofalo bit where she works at Medieval Times, and she just comes out and she's so miserable, and it's just like, I'll be
Welcome to Medieval Times, yeah.
And I'll be your serving wench, Melinda. Yeah. Yeah.
I think my primary memory of that movie is the filter needle drop when they play "Hey Man, Nice Shot" during the basketball game.
Yes.
The basketball game.
Yes. I think about that, and I think about Ben Stiller playing the parody on the Menendez brothers on the TV through the entire movie.
Yeah.
Where it's just like he's doing the phone call, and he's like, "I think they were Puerto Rican. They definitely, I think, were Puerto Rican." Yeah. Welcome to Almost Major, a podcast where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. We are on Artisan. We are on dark comedies, as we were talking about before, and we were talking about Novocaine from 2001. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And once again, we are joined by our special guest of Gavin from the Mixed Reviews.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
We were just like Chuck and Buck, and he was like, yes, but you gotta do Novocaine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, as you were saying before about Jason Lee, you take the sweet with the. That's a direct quote from Vanilla Sky.
Yeah. By the end of this, we will drop the needle drop of good vibrations. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. Yes, we are talking about Novocaine from 2001. This premiered at TIFF September 2001. Opened limited in the US November 16th, 2001 to 105 theaters, coming in at 18th place, and it went up as wide as 189 theaters. Top 5 that week were Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Monsters, Inc., Shallow Hal, Domestic Disturbance, and Heist.
Wow.
Oh, Heist is a good Mamet film. I mean, we might have mentioned this before. David Mamet is insane, but and awful now, especially politically. But that's a fun one. If you can get over, Mamet's politics as of late, he used to make good movies. Kind of a good thing that he doesn't anymore, so we don't have to defend him. But yeah.
Yeah. Charlie, I remember you saying that Shallow Hal is like an undiscovered masterpiece. Is that what you were saying?
I have never seen Shallow Hal, nor do I have any intent to actually.
Did I used to own it on DVD? Yes, I was 10. It was funny. It was funny.
I thought you were going to go with The World May Never Know. She wouldn't admit to it.
Did Gwyneth Paltrow say that was her worst movie, or am I making that up?
I mean, probably.
Gwyneth Paltrow famously doesn't remember any movie that she's in, so for all she knows, she wasn't.
I was definitely in the theater for Monsters, Inc., and I think that's the only one of these I've seen. Well, I have seen Shallow Hal, of course.
Harry Potter?
I saw that on DVD. I didn't see that in theaters. I saw Chamber of Secrets in theaters, and then I was off the Harry Potter train. Number 1 song in the U.S. this week was Family Affair by Mary J. Blige, which rules. Number 1 song in Canada was Hero by Enrique Iglesias.
Oh.
Yeah.
I would go to bat to say that also rules.
Yes. My damaged brain, I was looking this up and I saw Hero and I was like, oh, Chad Kroeger and my man from Saliva?
That's where my brain went. But then I was like, no, that was a year later. Wasn't that? Because Spider-Man was 2002, right?
2001.
I mean, you're also thinking Chad Kroeger because Nickelback is Canada. I mean, that's...
I was thinking that too. I was like the Canadian connection.
Yeah, I would figure I would look and just that song was number 1 for like 48 weeks. I love that song. I also have been binge listening to the Puff Daddy song and Jimmy Page song from Godzilla, which fucking rules. Sorry. I love that song. Budget for Novocaine is $8 million. Opening weekend, it raked in $418,000. Domestic gross of $2 million with an overall gross of $2.5 million.
So huge success.
Yes.
I'm not great at math, but I mean a clear winner.
Yeah, if I was Gene Shalit right now, I'd be like, Novocaine made me want to go to sleep. Yeah. Novocaine, quick plot rundown. Steve Martin is a dentist secure in his neatly ordered existence and happily engaged to his ambitious dental hygienist, played by Laura Dern. But when an alluring new patient, played by Helen Bonham Carter, steps into his life, this ordinary man discovers how little control he has over his world as he is drawn into the maelstrom of sex, drugs, and murder. Makes it sound cooler than it is. Directed and written by David Atkins, his only feature film. Prior to this, he wrote Arizona Dream in 1993. Same year as this, he wrote Peroxide Passion, which sounds like a fake movie. After this, he wrote and directed 5-episode show about his life titled The Horrible, Terrible Misadventures of David Atkins, where French Stewart plays him. Starring Steve Martin as Dr. Frank Sangster. Prior to you know who he is. Also played a dentist in Little Shop of Horrors. Also, we have to mention Bringing Down the House once again. I'm sorry.
Must we? Is
that like his follow-up to this? I mean, what's the movie immediately preceding Novocaine and following Novocaine? I'm looking it up now.
Cheaper by the Dozen was also 2003.
Yes, it looks like Bringing Down the House is the next movie after Novocaine, chronologically. But before is something called Joe Gould's Secret. I wonder if that's looks like that's just a small part, but that's
just a cameo.
Yeah,
right.
So I guess
Bowfinger
would be,
and he's the voice of Prince of Egypt. It looks like as well. So.
Yeah, he was one of the pharaoh's. I don't want to say minions. He was one of the. It was him and Martin Short, I think, were the two duo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They had that one song. What is it? Playing with the Big Boys now or something? Like, I watched that movie a lot.
He just does his entire 70s SNL King Tut thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I was just gonna ask, mentioning Martin Short, Steve Martin. Have any of you seen the show that he and Martin Short are doing with Selena Gomez, Only Murders in the Building?
No, but I've heard it's good.
Yeah,
very good. Yeah, definitely. Martin more energized in that than he is in any of his scenes in Novocaine. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
Also in the behind the scenes, which is like a 6-minute where it's just actors being like, "Oh my god, I loved working on this movie, and I worked with Steve Martin, and it was so good." Yeah, one of those type of things. Steve Martin, he's taking the piss out of it, but it's kind of telling that he's like, "So I worked on The Spanish Prisoner with David Mamet, and I saw this script was also written by David, but not the same David, but I saw that it was David, so I had to do it." And I was like,
sure.
Oof.
He's also great in The Spanish Prisoner. God, I'm becoming a David Mamet apologist on this show. I sincerely apologize. I do not like his politics.
I'm going to remove that so it looks like you love him and his politics. Sorry, I'm kidding. Helena Bonham Carter as Susan Ivy, nominated for The King's Speech in 2010 and Wings of a Dove in 1997. Prior to this, a few Merchant Ivory movies, Fight Club 1999. Same year she's in Planet of the Apes. After this, lots of Tim Burton movies, Harry Potter movies, etc.
Wonder what that was all about.
Yeah, strange collaboration.
Yeah. Laura Dern as Jean Noble. Prior to this, she's in Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains in 1982, which it's a great movie. Yeah. Blue Velvet in 1986, Jurassic Park 1993. We will be talking about her again when we talk about Dr. T and the Women.
Mm-hmm.
After
I hate that movie so much.
Wait, really?
Anyways,
I love Robert Altman, but I've heard that's one of his weaker efforts, and I've never seen it.
Robert Altman's one of my favorite film directors, and that's like in my, I don't want to say my bottom 2, but like the worst Robert Altman movie is Beyond Therapy. There's no comparison. But it's pretty down there for me.
Wow.
Can't wait to cover it with the single female directed movie that Artisan put out, which has never even been put on DVD is the thing. So yay. After this, Inland Empire in 2006, Certain Women 2016, 2 seasons of Big Little Lies, and Enlightened, to go back to Mike White. Charlie, can you help me with the pronunciation of my man? Is it Elias Cotes?
Elias Koteas, I think, is how you pronounce it.
Elias Koteas. I was way off. Elias Koteas. Okay. As Harlan Sangster. Prior to this, of course, Exotica in 1994. Lost Souls in 2000. Hell yeah. After this, he's in Simone or S1 Moan in 2002. Zodiac in 2007. Also, a classic film, A Very Harold and Kumar Christmas in 2011. Trivia. Steve Martin and Scott Caan did not get along during filming due to Caan's reckless behavior towards a stunt person in a scene in which his character smashes a beer bottle over the head of a man in a bar. Yeah, I would not assume that like Steve Martin and Scott Caan were just like real cool with each other.
Yeah,
you're just walking up to him and being like, "So I love Ready to Rumble." Like, how was that? I do love Ready to Rumble. Starting out as a drummer and songwriter, David Atkins found himself deciding to write Novocaine after the breakup of a band he was playing in. His 2 brothers and his dad were dentists, so he grew up in a dentist's office. Cool. So yeah, that's all the trivia I have for Novocaine. Has anybody seen this prior to? No. I figured not. I do remember this being a popular when Walmart started to do the $5 DVD bins. Like this was always in there, and I was like, this movie doesn't exist. Wow. It's between this and Mute Witness. Which one do I get for $5? Yeah.
I mean, like I've told you a few times, I think, Kevin. We had this DVD in my house because we had. It's probably like one of those cheap DVDs, but it came with like 2 other Steve Martin movies, LA Story and All of Me. And I think like in the order in which I watched those throughout my life, I started with All of Me, then I watched LA Story a couple of years ago, and then Novocaine was like dead last. That's the last one I caught up with it. It's like, of course I did, because it's like the not a movie that anyone really remembers.
Yeah, it's like, can I watch Sergeant Balto instead? Is that on this DVD set, please? Yeah.
Everything seemed picture perfect.
Whoa!
My day is broken up into 15-minute blocks so I can juggle 3 patients at once. Jean was my fiancée, kind of all-American girl you dream about. On the surface, you could say I had it all. Everything I had always thought I wanted. Who's up?
No patient.
I'm supposed to be here at 7:30 this morning.
This morning? Can I ask you something?
Go ahead.
Ever date any of your patients?
Give me back what you took. I won't say a word to anyone. If we were to discover you were selling drugs, we'd have to go ahead and prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law.
Your boss here is making threats to my sister.
I don't know who your sister is.
Oh, I think you do, friend.
You lied to me. And then you went to this girl's hotel room?
It's nothing to worry about. It was just a little misunderstanding.
This is a really bad idea.
Steve Martin, Helena Bonham Carter, Laura Dern, Scott Conn.
You roll into town. You line up a few dentists, or do you hit doctors too?
Dentists are easier. They're dumber. No offense.
Novocaine.
Yeah, initial thoughts. Nobody had seen this before. Like I was saying, it's not terrible. It's just not good. It does the thing of I cheated on my wife and now look at all the wacky things I have to do to cover it up type thing, which is just boring and annoying. But especially in the second half where it starts to get into the quote unquote real dark comedy, it just feels really tacked on and weird. I mean, I'm a fan of Laura Dern shooting somebody with a shotgun as much as anybody, but yeah, the second half of it definitely falls apart for me. Bryden, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of hated this movie. We've covered worse movies on the pod, I think, but this one, it just like, I don't know. I think like the fact that like it's just almost never funny, like kind of like just,
never
like, really saying.
No.
We'll get to it later. There's like there's like one scene 40 minutes into the movie that like I thought was funny, and I was like, wow, I can't believe it took like 40 minutes for like something funny to happen. I think the big thing that sinks this movie is that Steve Martin just is checked out of this. I think like one of my first notes is like Steve Martin voiceover. He sounds bored. I just wrote that in my notes.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing really that he does like with like his face or like his physicality, which I feel like are sometimes like his greatest assets, like as a comedic actor.
Of course.
Just, like, is so energized, and here there's just really nothing funny for him to do. And he and Helena Bonham Carter don't really have much chemistry, which like that would be fine if like the movie was like trying to make it like so clear that she is scamming him, which like the narration seems to kind of hint that that's where the movie's going, where he says like, I should have known that, you know, she was trouble when I first met her or whatever. But then like by the end of the movie, it's like they want you to believe that they actually have a thing for each other and like that they would end up together, like, and it doesn't ring true for a second. And I don't, and the direction in the movie is like, there's like attempts, I think, like to like spice it up like visually, where like it will like have handheld cameras or handheld shots to make like a scene like seem kind of more, you know, vibrant, and you know, have like all these like long shots where like it's just like following characters in and out of rooms or like panning around them to give it like some kind of sense of dynamism or like overlapping dialogue. They'll have is like people are just like hitting Martin with like a barrage of dialogue, and it's like trying to give the impression of like chaos to cover up like how limp the jokes are, I think. And I don't think this is like a case of like, I don't even like, this movie's like not particularly unpleasant to watch, but like I don't think it really nails like the tonal switches where like it will be having like scenes of like Scott Conn like trying to like assault his sister Helena Bonham Carter in like a motel room or wherever, where like that's like really kind of nasty, and then like it'll be like a scene of like Martin dealing with like, you know, goofy like affair cover-ups, and it's like it doesn't nail like the two tones that like I feel like that tonal deftness is like so necessary in dark comedy, and this movie just like doesn't have that that swiftness with it. So yeah, I just found this like really unpleasant to watch, and yeah, a movie that time forgot justly. But we'll get more into it, I guess, as we go on.
Yeah, the scene where you're talking about the chaos, I'm thinking of the scene where he comes in. It's like everything that could have gone bad went bad, and he's like going from room to room, but it doesn't feel chaotic in like a natural way. It just feels like people are talking over each other, and it just gets annoying type of thing. It's just like that's not how to really make the audience feel that things are chaotic. And like, yeah, I love Scott Conn. Like, Ready to Rumble's great. He's really great in Friends with Money. Like, he's really good in that. But, yeah, he's very, very, very one note in this. Doesn't really get much to do. But, I mean, I could say that about pretty much everybody in this movie. Yeah. But, Gavin, what do you think about your new favorite movie from 2001?
I mean, I hate unneeded voiceover in any movie, and this movie's full of it. And I know, I get what it's evoking. It's attempting to like create that noir, but like on such a base level, it's like, this is what noir is. There is some voiceover, and yeah, it's literally everything that you just said, Bryden. Like it's too scattershot. It literally feels like a script written by throwing darts at a board. And because of that, like it just doesn't, it never coalesces into anything that's remotely fun to watch or experience or even sit through. I will say, and I'm literally not trying to garner points with Charlie, but the thing I kept thinking about during this movie was Adam Egoyan's The Adjuster, which is just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful movie. And this movie wants so badly to strike that same tone that movie has, where that movie is both a really dark melodrama, but also has some really wild, funny moments that are tonally like feel out of place, but somehow work completely. And there's all these weird post-production things in Novocaine that I think are added because the movie's not wild and the movie's not that so there you get like occasional x-rays that end a scene, or like there's a scene later in the film. Yeah, there's a scene later in the film where Laura Dern kills Elias Koteas. I know I'm saying it wrong.
I don't even know if I'm saying it right. That's just how I've been pronouncing it my entire life.
That sounds like a Harry Potter spell, so I'm gonna go with that.
I love him. He's amazingly hot in The Adjuster. But when she kills him and it's like shot from the angle of the like camera of the
dental equipment, whatever.
Yeah, the dental equipment. Like it fully, like it's just a bunch of gimmicks, and none of it feels like it matters. And also like that transition out when it like turns off like is 101. Don't put that in a movie. Yeah. I put that in the social videos for the mixed reviews. Don't put that in a movie. But yeah, I didn't like it.
Okay. Charlie?
Yeah, we're all on the same page on this one. I thought this movie was pretty fucking lame. I completely agree with everything everyone has said. Bryden is right on the money. Steve Martin is asleep in this movie. I mean, like, he's just... And I love Steve Martin, but, like, you can tell he doesn't care. It's like he kind of realized, like, oh, shit, I actually committed to this. Now I just have to get through it. The other thing about it, and, yeah, Gavin, you brought up, like, the neo-noir stuff. What I personally, and I agree, the biggest sin is it's not funny at all. It's also the neo-noir tropes. Like, it doesn't even allow... It kind of justifies Steve Martin's affair, like, in the end. It kind of just, it makes it be like, well, at least he did this, which it was actually right for him to do this because X, Y, and Z and reasons that we'll get into, especially regarding Laura Dern's character, who is suddenly a different person an hour in. Like, there's not even any breadcrumbs as to, like, her ultimate decision. Sorry, Kevin just changed his background. To
the wild Japanese poster for this movie that makes it look like a horror movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, it's fine. I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes, saw it wasn't getting good reviews, but I saw the cast, and, you know, the plot isn't terrible on paper if you pitch it that way, so I'm kind of like, maybe I'll, like, go into this, like, and champion it as kind of a wounded duck or something that wasn't, like, you know, well-regarded at the time, but it's actually good. And I know what you mean, Bryden, because I think this is, like, definitely not the worst film we've covered on the show, but the most frustrating because of all the wasted potential. I mean, Helena Bonham Carter is a femme fatale. Like, that sounds great. The movie robs her of any agency. She doesn't get to have fun. She doesn't really even get to be fun in a seductive kind of way. There's no reason why Steve Martin would just, you know, cheat on Laura Dern with her. And then she, with the creepy relationship with her brother, it just robs her of any type of, you know, power that we love to see in femme fatale roles. And then I don't want to say this especially with the female characters, it felt, I don't want to say misogynistic is such a strong word, but it definitely felt like the women in this movie were written in specifically for Steve Martin's character, who is kind of a non-entity to begin with. I mean, why does he want to be a dentist? What does he do? What's his personality? He also makes... Right. I don't need my dark comedies or neo-noirs to have likable protagonists either, but at least make them interesting or make sense. There's so many times in this movie where Steve Martin's like, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to the police. I'm like, why don't you just go to the police? Why? Like,
because they're so attracted to each other.
Because they're so attracted, where you can't even make that type of thing. Like, I mean, this is a completely different type of movie, but because the new Adrian Lyne film is coming out, I watched Unfaithful for the first time with Diane Lane, and it's like, that's a movie about an extramarital affair that's A, sexy, B, filled with characters with personal lives and in inner interiorities and full of self-loathing, and like, like it doesn't know what it wants to be, if it is like a wacky like affair comedy or a neo-noir, and it's so lazy. There's like a moment where Steve Martin has to escape from the cops, and he goes through a vent in the ceiling in a motel, and he just happens to walk into a room, and the joke is just these heavier people are so into this sex they're having that they just don't notice Steve Martin, and even the movie kind of gives up of a punchline where it just kind of like he just walks out, and it's just like, is that the joke? And the movie's like, I guess,
I guess,
like
just no tension. It's like he might have to get around this couple, and then he does. End of scene.
End of scene. It just felt
Charlie. As a heavyset person myself, I can tell you, there's nothing funnier than the fact that fat people like to have sex as well, too.
Yeah,
just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Wait, you're lying. Wait,
no,
what?
No.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's so funny.
We'll research that on our free time. Anyways, Charlie.
Oh my God. No, that's basically all I have to say.
Sense.
That's basically, I mean, it's just, I found it to be lazy and a little more depressing than something. Like, we all went into Boat Trip going like, okay, this is going to be terrible, but how is it going to be terrible? This, you kind of go in and you're like, well, it didn't get much reception. It wasn't well received at the time, but maybe there's something here, and instead it's just nothing. So the wasted potential makes it all the more of a dirge. And like, I mentioned this beforehand, but like, I was taking notes on this thing, and then my phone died an hour in, and I just kind of gave up, where I was just kind of like, there's no coming, like, this, we've gone too far. This movie's not gonna save itself in the last 30 minutes.
No. I think I'm gonna have to like those karaoke bars in the US where if you try to play Bohemian Rhapsody, you have to pay $10. Anytime anybody mentions Boat Trip going forward, you have to Venmo me like $10. Like, it needs to be scrubbed from our memory. That episode doesn't exist, actually. We had to put it out.
I love that. I will say, I love that for you guys that it's become a barometer, though, because it's like,
well, to compare everything to Boat Trip, everything's a masterpiece. Yeah. But yeah, like when you're talking about the relations of Laura Dern and Helena Bonham Carter, but yeah, it kind of justifies, it's like, yeah, he cheated on his wife, and good thing he did, because she became a psychopath, type of thing. Yeah, I do not buy them being together at the end, but whatever.
Yeah, and the other thing too with like Martin's character, like, he's like not. He's just like, he is such a nothing. Like, he's not likable enough for you to root for him, but also he's not even like evil enough for him like to like get proper comeuppance at the end of the movie. Like, it's just sort of like, well, it turns out he didn't really do anything wrong. I mean, yeah, he's an asshole, but also he didn't do anything wrong. So good for him that he ends up in France, right?
it's not really a dark comedy when the film identifies with him so much.
Yes.
Like, it only identifies from his perspective and nobody else's.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, because it's like he's like the wrong man in this situation. It's like if he was like actually doing bad things, it would be more darkly comedic, which
none of the jokes are at his expense. They're all on everybody else. And
right. It's like, it should be all on his expense of how he's just like a loser dentist. Like, the start of the plot on Wikipedia is very funny. It doesn't start with the plot. It goes, generally, this film is a dark and quirky, quote, tragicomedy. Fuck off. The quote-unquote everyman protagonist... Well, who wrote this? Dr. Frank Sangster I got it. Is a dentist with a fairly pleasant but rather innocuous, ordinary, and uneventful life. But all of this gets derailed, and Frank's life descends into an incredibly complex mess from the minute a beautiful and seductive new patient named Susan Ivy comes to him seeking a root canal and a little pain relief. Who wrote this? Anyways, on Susan's initial office visit, Frank schedules her for a root canal the very next day and offers her some ibuprofen to address her pain in the meanwhile. Claiming that she is allergic to the offered medication, Susan requests a prescription for the addictive painkiller Demerol. Frank provides the prescription, but only for 5 tablets. However, Susan changes the doses from 5 tablets to 50 when she collects the medication. Susan arrives at her appointment 12 hours late, claiming to have mistaken the time. She seduces Frank, talks him into getting drunk and having sex with her.
At this point, also, like, before they've had sex, he's, like, run into his brother at his house, like, who's, like, Elias Koteas plays his brother, who's, like, kind of, like, a wash-up, doesn't really know what he's doing with his life, and they go to a bar, and they witness, like, a run-in with Scott Conn, who's, like, this ruffian who, like, attacks, like, the bouncer and, like, gets into a tiff with Martin. The editing in that scene's kind of weird, where, like, Martin tells Scott Conn to relax, but then, like, you hear Scott Conn reply, like, huh? Like, what are you saying, tough guy? But, like, it's spoken off screen, and then, like, it cuts to, like, Conn confronts him. It's just kind of, like, the confrontation's, like, weirdly edited in a way that, like, kind of just gives you a hint that the movie's going wrong already. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't give you a good sense of the interior space of that bar, which is a huge mistake that a lot of people make when they're putting together a film, especially in the edit room. And it's like you have to be able to let people know the space they're in, or go out of your way to make sure that they never know what space they're in. Yeah. But there's like very little middle ground there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Very funny scene, because you think somebody has broke into Stephen Martin's house, but it's actually just his brother. And he's like, I took all your medication and I painted all your cabinets. But you think he's dead at the first part of it, but
which comes back later.
Yeah. Jokes. Big fan of the jokes in this movie.
I'm using that word loosely, but
right. Well, it's a dark comedy. If you don't get it, you know. Susan arrives I already said that. During the night, Susan steals all of Frank's narcotics. The next day, there's a DEA (Drug Enforcement Administration) agent. Thanks, I didn't know what that meant. At Frank's office, demanding to see the dentist's narcotic supply, because an 18-year-old had driven a car off a cliff under the influence of cocaine hydrochloric from a bottle registered to the dentist. Knowing that Susan had stole his entire drug supply, Frank puts the agent off, saying he dispense it all to the patients. The agent leaves with the promise that if Frank fails to produce the empty cabinets in 2 days, the DEA will place him under arrest. How does the DEA agent not arrest him immediately?
That's another question I had, where I was just like, oh, you have all the evidence, and the fact that Steve Martin is still like, I'll give Helena Bonham Carter another chance. It's like, well, you haven't even, like... Oh, you were going to say something, Gavin.
Well, no, it's just there's so many, like, they've populated these movies with these like, quote-unquote quirky characters, and the one that works, and once again we haven't gotten there yet, is the Kevin Bacon character. But even the thing that stuck with me is when he calls the pharmacist, and the pharmacist is like, oh, next time if you do 50 pills, I won't fill it for you. And he's like, well, why didn't you stop her? And he's like, oh, you were jabbing your jaw. And I was like, oh, this is a bit that we're doing about, like, the pharmacist is too stupid, but also, and all of the characters are like this throughout the movie, because they think it adds a layer of comedy, but it doesn't. It just is this unreal world where everybody's this very quirky version of. So it's the same thing with this DEA agent. It's like, why doesn't he just arrest him on the spot? Well, because the movie would end. So instead you give him these, like, tawdry quirks of just like, well, if I come back in 2 days and you don't give me the containers, you're going to jail. And that's not a movie.
I mean, right. Yeah, I was looking through my notes again, like, because, like, I forgot a lot of this movie, like, even though I took notes on it. Like there is, like, kind of, like, a running thread of how, like, all these people who are, like, running these institutions kind of just, like, are like very like pliable and like don't really care about their jobs. I mean, like there's this one scene where he's like Martin's mistaken for a peeping tom, and he's like about to be arrested. And then like he says to the motel manager's like, would you take a bribe of like $100? And the manager's like, yes, I would. Just like takes it, and like Sean like and like there is like maybe like something here of like an idea for like a dark comedy about how like Martin is like kind of just going through the motions of his life, and that's how like a lot of other people are, but like they just kind of maybe don't care about their jobs. And then there is like a sign near the end of the movie in like the dentist office where it says be proactive, and like getting rid of the decay and what's wrong in his life, which he's constantly droning about in his voiceover. But like I don't know, like you don't really care. Like the movie's just like so lacking in energy, and like the punchlines are just like not there. Like you're right about how like you're right, Gavin, about talking about like that pharmacy scene where like it's like, oh, you don't realize that like this is a joke like initially, because like it's like it has the rhythm of a joke, but the writing is just not up to snuff. It's like there's a one scene where like after like Martin like is just stumbled upon like a particularly sticky situation. I think what is it that Laura Dern says to him, acting like a criminal and you're innocent. And like, that's like the ending of the scene. But then it cuts to like a gurney just wheeling into like the house. And it's like, why is that like that? Is that like the punchline of the scene? It doesn't really make sense, like rhythmically, that like that's where you'd end the scene and transition. It's just, it's such a mess. Yeah.
It's just, nothing in this movie really makes any sense. I'd say at one point I was like, oh, Laura Dern's our audience surrogate. And then in order to make like a clever twist, nope. But it's like, that's not even like them trying to pull the rug out from underneath. I was just like, oh, all right. Like, I guess, whatever. Like, like, I guess this is the direction the movie's going in. This is also a bad idea. Like, like
twists and turns, buddy. You don't know what's going on.
And I agree with you about the writing, Bryden. Like just like I think that the trailer, the biggest joke is like, now do you do this to dentists or doctors? And Helena Bonham Carter says dentists are easier. They're dumber. No offense. And I'm kind of like, what is the joke there apart from like?
That's funny, Charlie. How do you not laugh?
But like,
it's funny.
Like
they can't write prescriptions. Their handwriting's messy. It's
like,
hilarious.
Like what is? Yeah, I don't understand. And then like it all hinges on like at least make the seduction scene. At least make Helena Bonham Carter like give her some sort of more empowerment to seduce Steve Martin, because he's immediately just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to do this. It's like, why? Like what she's doing is very obvious. It's very obvious. It's not sexy. Like the scene itself isn't sexy. I'm not saying Helena Bonham Carter looks great, always has. It's just like the way she's acting. It's like, why not? If it's a dark comedy, like amp it up a little bit. Amp it up, make it like, I'm not saying you have to show a graphic sex scene, but it certainly would have helped as opposed to just like, I don't know, fucking in a dentist chair. That's like. It's like your friend of your mom's just being like, let's be naughty, but what they really mean is like, I don't know, let's make brownies or something. Like, it's not.
I have this one fantasy. I'm getting my root canal now.
Yeah.
But yeah, she doesn't have like. I wish we could have saw more of just her by herself, like the only scenes with her and Scott Conn is like them fighting and whatnot, because like, and then Steve Martin comes over and he's like, you better give me the capsules, and she's like, can you please just like lay down until I fall asleep? Like already it's just like not even somebody that he should fear. It's like she's already like
and it's so funny too, because I feel like, and this is not me judging her performance, but I feel like she wouldn't have this role without Fight Club, without Marla from Fight Club.
1000%. 1000%.
But she's not doing, like, the character's not written to like provide that for her. So she's like still in this mode, and then she's exactly like you said, like there's nothing that she's giving off that makes her heightened in a sexual way or scary in another way. And yeah, it's just really unfortunate.
It strips her away. I mean, Bryden touched upon this. It strips her away of any agency because she has an abusive brother. And I just immediately was like, wait, what? That's not fun.
Yeah.
That's not funny. That's not even interesting. That's
especially since that abuse is highly, as it was brought up before, is highly suggested that it is sexual in nature as well.
Yeah.
And so like the humor immediately stops dropping when that's introduced too, because it's just like, oh man. Like,
It's like, yeah, we're a dark comedy, but we can get serious. And you're like, nah, it doesn't really work that way. Not here, no.
This might be a bit of a reach, but this is what's interesting is watching the credits of this movie. One of the people who's thanked in this is Jonathan Demme, which is really funny.
Wow.
What this movie, thinking about it a little bit more, I thought about, especially the arc of this movie where Martin realizing he's living kind of a straight-laced life and maybe he wants to like get out of it. Maybe the thanks here is maybe it's like something wild where like it's like, you know, Jeff Daniels is like a guy who's like living a straight-laced businessman, and then this like sort of wild free spirit like comes into his life and shakes it up. And then like that movie does introduce, I mean, what's so masterful about that movie, which is beautifully directed and acted with actors who seem to actually give a shit, is like how it like starts out like kind of like a light romantic comedy with like all these like weird eccentricities, and then it like builds to like the like gradually dark turn that movie takes in like the second half. But like that's because like that movie really has like a fine control of like tone and like builds to it, whereas this movie is just like veering like uneasily from like the darkness to like the wacky comedy, like from scene to scene in a way that like with no rhyme or reason, and it like really kind of mixes uneasily. Again, I'm not like trying to like, it's not a perfect 1-to-1 ratio, but that's like the movie I'm thinking of, like especially if he's thanking Demme. I'm like, wow, like that really not a great, I mean, cool that you're trying to emulate Demme. You failed.
Well, like something wild too. I mean, the first time you see Melanie Griffith, you're like, "Who is this? I want to hang out with her." And she's got this car, and she's sexually confident. I mean, that whole bit in the beginning where that movie starts off with her being like, "Hey, you didn't pay for your food in the diner," and then they walk past the diner, and he's like, "Aren't you going to take me in?" And she's like, "I don't work there." Like immediately, like, oh, already charming, already displaying like she's confident and she knows she has an allure over Jeff Daniels. Like, and on top of that, when you find out more about Jeff Daniels in this movie, Helena Bonham Carter in this movie is just sitting in a dentist chair for the entire seduction. She's not doing anything, you know, and this is the way, I'm talking about this in the way that she's directed, not in the way that I think her performance is fine. But she's like literally just given stale dialogue. She's not allowed to like physically seduce him in any way. It's just vanilla, boring, like, and then they apparently have such good sex that they need to, both of them feel their urge to see each other again. It's like, well, Something Wild has that really fantastically kinky scene in the motel room very early on, which it's hot and it's funny and it's dangerous. This is none of that. Like, it's just there, just so.
No, weird. I think that's a really good call and a really good comparison, actually, too. And I think the only reason that it never came to me, why it never entered my brain, is that Something Wild is a good movie. Just couldn't compare them.
Yeah.
But you're right. Now that you're saying it, it's like, oh yeah, no, there's some pretty decent comparisons happening here that like, but it's just the wrong turn at Albuquerque at every chance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And nothing has any weight in this movie. The sex doesn't have weight. No. The violence doesn't have weight.
The threat of him ending up in jail doesn't have any weight.
I wanted him to get caught. I was like, fuck this guy, he sucks. Like why am I supposed to be rooting for any of these people? Like,
but the movie absolves him at every turn, where it's like, well, actually, he's not guilty of anything. And it's like, but he still fucking sucks. Like, he's not a nice person. Like, he's a dick to his employees. It's like...
And if you want to talk black comedies, I mean, Wolf of Wall Street's one of my favorite movies, and that's 3 hours long of just excess, and this DiCaprio is literally like a normal person for the first 10 minutes and then becomes, you know, a pig and also faces no consequences. I know it's weird to compare this to a Martin Scorsese movie, but like that is a movie where you were stuck with the most despicable, disgusting people, and it's like having your cake, barfing up the cake and eating more cake just because you get that sense of like why you get that sense of allure. The thing that's upsetting that I don't think a lot of people want to talk about and why the black comedy works is like sex and drugs are appealing, and it's just when you and the excessive length of that film is what makes you feel sick and what makes it so brilliant. Here, it's a 90-minute movie. It took me like twice as long to watch this movie.
It felt so goddamn long.
It felt so goddamn long. It was just like, where's the appeal in cheating? Where's the appeal in wanting to get away with this? Like, Martin's character doesn't even seem scared or threatened for a second. He's just like, all right.
He's annoyed.
He's annoyed.
He can't be bothered.
Yeah, but I'm just like, dude. And like, even the subject of dentistry, it's just hollow. It's just like, yeah, we'll throw in a few, as you put in, Gavin, like the x-rays and some weird
line is like tooth decay, and you're like, no, what?
No. Yeah, it just feels so hollow. Like, you know, you look at something like came out around the same time, like 1 Hour Photo. Like, it makes sense that
Rules.
Robin Williams, all of those types of things. It made me think of that, and like how Robin Williams, as a someone obsessed with photography, would be making all of these points about cameras being like a hunting term. Here it's just like, and as you said, Kevin, lying, like tooth decay. It feels so forced. It feels so stupid. Why is he even? It's also disappointing because, as we mentioned, Steve Martin's like one of his best performances is in Little Shop of Horrors, and he's just, there's just none of that here. Yeah.
I kept thinking about 1 Hour Photo too, and I was thinking specifically about there were a lot of these male comedians who were like trying to branch out into something more adult, more darker at the time, and very few successes, which is not to say, I mean, Robin Williams had been doing dramatic roles all throughout his career, but I mean, something very specific like this sort of thrillery, dark comedy that was attracting, comedians at the time trying to show range. And like, I really like Steve Martin. There's a lot of Steve Martin movies I really love, and he doesn't have it here either, because as you all have said, he's very much just sleepwalking through this part. And so, he's the lead. You gotta give it something.
He doesn't even seem like physically, like at one point he has to go through vents and climb ceilings and stuff like that. He's never like, oh, I can't do this, or like, oh, I guess I have to, like, oh, like there's not even tension to that. It's like, does Steve Martin do this type of physical activity regularly? Because normal people don't do this sort of stuff, and he seems just kind of like, all right, like, sorry, Kevin, yeah.
For some reason, there's so much pot left, and it's disappointing. We just got to get back to it, but y'all are making great notes. But we haven't even got to Kevin Bacon yet, which is a character that I don't know why he exists in this, but he's the best part of it.
It's basically extended cameo. Like, he's in 2 scenes.
Right. With the most violent facial hair I've ever seen. That night, Frank goes to Susan's hotel room to demand the empty containers, threatening that he'll call the police if she doesn't provide them. Once again, she overrides his initial intentions and seduces him, with the result that they have sex and he spends the night with her. Cool. The next day at his office, Frank is confronted by Susan's brother, Dwayne Ivey, played by Scott Conn, having a violent scene saying, "Stay the hell away from my sister." Dwayne ends the conversation, "I don't ever want to see you again, because if I do, I'm going to hurt you," which didn't sound menacing when he said it.
In that motel scene when he confronts Helena Bonham Carter, Steve Martin, that is, she says that she wishes her brother would disappear. That's the phrasing, and that comes back to bite Martin later. But like, we'll get to that, I'm sure, very quickly. That was a quick thing I should mention.
I do remember that, yeah. A lot of very obvious foreshadowing. That night, Frank returns to Susan's hotel room, and assuming that Susan is the form he sees in the bed, starts talking to her. The person under the blanket turns out to not be Susan, but brother Dwayne, who leaps up and attacks Frank, attempting to strangle him. Frank takes scissors from a nearby desk and stabs Dwayne in the hand, impaling him and embedding the scissors. Frank flees, stopping off at a bar to calm down. Weird. On arriving at home, just minutes ahead of his girlfriend.
Have a drink at home, man. Like,
I gotta cool down. I gotta go back to the bar where I saw Scott Conn before. Frank flees, stopping off at a bar, blah, blah, blah. Arriving at home just minutes ahead of his girlfriend, Jean, played by Laura Dern, he finds Dwayne dead on the floor. Police arrive on the scene. Before this, she's like, "Oh, we gotta call the police." He's like, "Now, wait a minute." And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we have to call the police. He's like, "No, hold on. Let's think about this." But eventually the police are called. They arrive to question Frank. Comedically adding to Frank's distress and anxiety is actor Lance Phillips, played by Kevin Bacon, a hack actor doing research for a role and permitted by the police to question Frank aggressively that causes Frank's in heightened discomfort. After the police arrive and depart, Frank tells Jean about the whole ordeal. A while later, Frank is arrested for the murder of Dwayne Ivey based on findings Frank's teeth marks on the body that someone else put there after killing Dwayne. After Frank breaks free, all of Chicago is on the lookout for him. He goes to his office in the night only to find his brother Harlan lying dead.
Did you want to talk about the Kevin Bacon scene? Because that's like we said, I think that's maybe like the one funny scene in the movie.
Yes.
And this is also our second appearance from Keith David in our Artisan May series, because he was previously in Requiem for a
And
Dream.
Kevin Bacon.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, Bacon's really funny in this.
It's really funny.
Like the squinty stares that he's doing when he's trying to act serious and intimidating, like when he's pretending to be a cop, and also that like Keith David as like the cop who's like, you know, that he's moonlighting is like kind of encouraging the behavior. Like when Kevin Bacon asks like, "Oh, were you having sex with this person's sister or whatever?" And then like Keith David like raises his eyebrows and is like, "Ooh, this is an interesting question. I want to know the answer to." Like that's like they do have like in just like a matter of minutes they bring more energy to any of the performers combined in the rest of the movie.
Right, and it's two roles that have no reason to exist, but they're the funniest part. Like there's no reason for like Keith David to be a prominent officer in this movie, and there's no reason for Kevin Bacon to just be an actor for some reason. But yeah, I mean,
it's also a testament to his performance because he is really funny, and then he starts talking about, well, this is the part of the movie where, and I was like, fuck off with this fourth wall breaking bullshit. Like, and it's not Bacon's fault. He makes it palatable because he's so committed, but it is that thing where it's like, this movie thinks it's smart. This movie isn't trying. Like, all of a sudden now it is, for whatever reason, thinking it's worthy of this type of joke, and it's just, nah.
At this point, it is revealed that Frank's girlfriend, Jean, is behind all the killing because reasons. Jean has been conspiring with Harlan. That's
Elias Koteas, the brother.
Yes, yeah, Steve Martin's brother. Whom she's been having an affair with to use Susan to frame Frank for selling drugs so that she can take full control of the company she and Frank had started together. There's also, he mentions to her that his brother came in to town, he's staying at her house, and she's like, he tried to like molest me. He's like, yeah, but he's a good guy.
Yeah,
like,
I made a note of
that's the excuse he uses.
He was drunk, and he's my brother. Yeah, and it's also just weird because like, especially when you find out that Laura Dern's the like villain of it all. Like, I think she's introduced as through a voiceover line of like, she's the type of person who can make a perfect like banana bread and then clean the office right after. And I'm kind of like, is this movie kind of like shooting like kind of being like, oh, if you have like a woman who loves you in your life and like can commit to like the stereotypical like housewife tropes, like be suspicious. Like I don't know if the movie's trying to imply that, but like it is really weird how they basically imply that she's like a perfect fiance because she's a good cook and she's clean, and then she turns out to be like basically like, well, we're gonna get to it in the plot. Maybe I spoke too soon.
Yeah, the movie's just like, you can't trust the good ones. That's what it's saying, man.
And even Helena Bonham Carter, who like is kind of like the free spirit, she gets like domesticated by the end of the movie, where she's just like, I don't know, like planting flowers and like raising his kid. Like it's like, okay, it's so boring.
Yeah, she's pregnant by the end of it. We're just like, all right.
It's just like, don't trust the good ones. The crazy ones, you know, you can tame them. Like, what? Okay, whatever. However, Dwayne came along with Susan, which was not part of the plan, and Jean ended up killing him using Frank's dentures to make the bite marks.
Why the bite marks? Why are they doing that? Is it just to keep it with the dentist?
Because
like,
teeth. Yeah.
And like, once again, going with your theory that like maybe the movie is commenting on that nobody's particularly good at their job and they're just trying to make it through the day. Like, I guess you could say the police are lazy, but like, what is the motivation that they would believe that Frank is running around biting people after they're dead? Like, that's the dentist.
Yeah, you can never trust them. Yeah.
It's like it made me think of like Francis Dollarhide from Manhunter. Like it just like, but like that makes sense. It's just like, they just assume that there are Francis Dollarhides going around. Just like it's a common trope to bite people.
Just
like
a legion of Francis Dollarhides.
Yeah, like I don't know. Again, the biting, it's just why? Because it fits in with the dentist stuff? Why is the dentist stuff? I don't know. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with anything. These people aren't real. They don't have lives. Like, they're... Yeah. Sorry. I'm just, like, the more I talk about this movie, the more frustrated I'm getting with it.
Right. Luckily for you, you don't own a copy of it, and it stares at you while you sit on the couch. It's like my man in Grizzly Man just being like, you must destroy this. This will be the white elephant in any room you're in. That's me with Boat Trip right now in Novocaine. Unfortunately for Harlan, her plan was to eventually kill him as well with the shotgun to tie up all loose endings and make it appear that Frank killed him after Dwayne. Realizing he'd never be free without starting over, Frank pulls out all of his dead brother's teeth as well as his... This is fucking ridiculous. Frank uses his dental skills to replace his own teeth into his brother's skull. How do you have dental skills for that? He just pushes the shits in.
Also, you describing it makes it sound far more interesting than it is, because the movie is so matter-of-fact, like, this is what we're doing now, and you're kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not... He's never just like, this is the only option I have. He's just like, well, he's dead. All right.
Also,
Novocaine, yeah.
I want to point out just real quick, and like maybe it's all the action movies I've seen over the years, a point blank shotgun blast to the face does not leave like a little scar on his cheek.
I made a note of that too.
He would not have had a head. Like that would have been like Frank should have walked into that office and it should have been a bloody stump.
I was shocked by that.
He should have been like, "Who's that?"
No, I was seriously shocked by that too, Gavin. Where I was just like, it just scraped his face. Like, what the fuck? Like, then just change the firearm if you don't have the budget for gore. Like, it's.
And the thing that nabs Dern in the end is the fact that like Coteus was like using like the dental video equipment to like just like fucking around the video, and then like that films his own murder, and then like that's the evidence, and the fireproof cabinets with all the tapes like ends up. I'm like,
well, I was gonna say, and then it's like the like good thing she talked me into the fireproof cabinets, and it's like I hate you movie. I hate you so
and
much.
Also like it would all like it's like so wait, he didn't have to pull out his own teeth. He could have just like used the video and proved his innocence there probably. Like that's it's like I mean that would be funny too. Maybe it was like, wait, so I didn't have to do this? Well, all right. That might have been funny, but
it's also foreshadowed because there's a shot from the perspective of the camera there, where it's just kind of like, oh, well, this is gonna. It's as if this movie expects nobody has ever seen a movie before.
Hey, dumbass, watch this.
Yeah, like.
Why didn't Laura Dern like do something else with dental, like strangle my man with like dental floss or something? You know. Nothing?
Yeah, nothing. She would also
put a bunch of cotton balls in his mouth, you know, that they're in those containers.
And going back to till he dies, like.
And going back to Gavin's point, like, she'd be caked in gore. Like, it is like a shotgun blast, and then it's just like totally spotless. Like, it just doesn't. Yeah.
I mean, she's an obsessive cleaner. I mean, we see that when she's like just scrubbing the frames in her house or whatever.
And that's how we know that she's evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
She also, after doing it, baked a banana bread in the dentist's office. It's crazy.
I do. That's what? Yeah. I remember the behind the scenes, the director's talking about like, Steve Martin plays this doctor, has this whimsical life, but then this woman enters his office and whatnot, and she sends him on a spiral, and the spiral is like the Novocaine wearing off of his body, and I was like, shut the fuck up, dude. I was like, shut up. Frank uses his dental skills, blah blah blah, and then sets fire to the dental office with Harlan's corpse replete with replaced teeth left inside. Frank and Susan, now lovers, escape to France, where they live happily ever after in a little cottage on the countryside.
Oh, yeah, because they've been showing French countryside tapes to like calm the patients down during the appointments. Yeah. It's just like the setups like the movie has like are just like the lamest payoffs, like or the silliest payoffs rather, like where it's like when the cop comes in, like when she's like searching for like the teeth impressions, so she like starts to smoke up, and then like Martin says like, oh, we have like highly flammable gas in here, and then like when he blows up the office, I'm like, so I guess that like cigarette scene was like foreshadowing for like in the opposite blow. Okay, cool payoff, I guess.
Also, it's very funny that Laura Dern is in jail and has a difficult time placing stuffed animals in the correct order. Like even that, I was just like, really? Like, that's not.
That was joke. Hilarious, Charlie. Hilarious. No. The last paragraph we have here. Meanwhile, Jean's attempt to frame Frank fall apart. Unbeknownst to her, Harlan was playing with the medical video camera while he was shot and recovered the footage. Shows Jean firing the shotgun at the camera holder, but fails to show it was Harlan who was shot. Therefore, the police wrongly assumed that Jean shot Frank and arrest her. I don't know if they bring up like, so you like burned down the entire building as well. Is that what happened? But yeah, that's the ending. Yay, France! Yay.
Oh yeah, and it says instead of saying the end, it says Finn because France.
France.
Oh, okay. I'm logging on to Letterboxd. Did they have a negative?
Also, because this movie was true cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah. As the French call it, Novocaine. Yeah. Yeah, so
I'm
yeah,
just
that's-
imagining. There's a great Simpsons gag where the Euro Itchy and Scratchy land that just cuts to one of them going, "My children need wine," and that's all I thought of at the end of that movie. Just like, yeah,
what's the one skit where Krusty's like, we have a new we don't have Itchy and Scratchy anymore.
We have Worker and Parasite. Yeah, it's just
It's like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. That's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Just like
I just the other night I read the word cauldron and I was just like, I gotta do the Simpsons thing where it's just like, sex cauldron. I thought they closed that place down.
We're not talking about we're talking about sex in front of the children. Sex cauldron. Yeah.
You know what's funny, Simpsons? You know what's not funny, Novocaine.
Novocaine.
Yep. Oh, I did. I did see. Here's Raj's review where he said he found the screwball film noir funny all the way through and declared its loopholes forgivable for a comedy.
He gives us the same He gives us the same rating as Chuck and Buck, by the way, 3 stars for both movies.
For a second, I thought you were also going to bring up he gave the same rating to Gothica, which he also is like.
Yes,
the loopholes are fine. However,
It's like,
Gothica,
it's all fine.
However, Gothica is way funnier than this movie. It actually is. One of my favorite parts of that movie is, we shouldn't be treating you because we know you worked here and you're in the psychiatric institution now because you murdered your husband, but we're looking to transfer you, and they just never do that. They just, oh God. Sorry.
That's because they understood comedy in that movie.
It's true. It's true. When you want comedy, you go for the director of what else did he do?
Lahane. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, the Babylon AD guy. Yeah. That's Novocaine, folks. My final thoughts are: don't feel any different. It's not good. It's a failed comedy. Everybody in it is not doing bad work. Like, besides Steve Martin, is just like not what you expect. But like Helena Bonham Carter is like what she's given. She's never bad. Oh, we forgot to mention Laura Dern like stancing up to Scott Conn with like kung fu moves because she's apparently been doing
Taekwondo.
Like,
that's the
Taekwondo.
Specific.
Yes.
Yeah.
So weird.
That's funny.
So weird. And
she says to Steve Martin, she's like, get behind me. It's kind of funny. Final thoughts? Did this podcast change your mind? Is this an undiscovered gem? Bryden?
Yeah, no, I mean, this movie, I would have been really nice of it if this movie had any kind of merit, or anything worth looking back on, and unfortunately, it's just like no one really. It's like there's just a lot of flat sweat in like trying to make like the script work with like the direction. It's like trying to suggest like I said, like trying to suggest the mood of chaos, but then like there's just like nothing going on in the script. Thematically or jokes wise, I mean, that's like the big thing. It's just like this is like rarely ever funny at all, and the Steve Martin performance especially, like, kind of just like sinks this whole thing. And unfortunately, the supporting cast is not given a whole lot to do to make the movie any funnier. But I did like the Kevin Bacon cameo, and that's really about it. But
yeah. Gavin, I just recently listened to your episode about Kevin Bacon, which was really good.
Yeah, surprisingly didn't mention this film. Don't know why.
Yeah.
This hallmark in his career. Yeah, have me on when you do Tremors, though. But
good movie.
I absolutely love Tremors. The only closing thought I have is R.I.P. Lynn Thigpen, also known as Chief from Where's the World is Carmen Sandiego. All three of you are probably too young for that.
No, I watched that show all the time.
I watched it too. Yeah.
I actually can't believe we didn't mention that because I texted Bryden and Kevin was like, you did not tell me the Chief from Where in the Time is Carmen Sandiego is on in this movie.
Yeah,
also completely wasted. She just disappears from the movie.
Yeah, she has like maybe 5 lines in the entire movie, which was really unfortunate. And she passed away in 2003 from a cerebral hemorrhage. So like real sad way to end her too. So I love her. She's great in everything that she's ever been in. Even crap like this.
Yeah. To connect all the movies, she was in Law and Order. So we're still going, folks. Don't worry. Charlie?
Yeah, what else is there to say about this thing? It's just dead on arrival. I mean, it's just, yeah, like it kind of yeah. As I said before, was rooting for this thing to be better than its reputation going in. Immediately was like, oh, I understand why this movie was panned, and then it just never improved. It's just, it's more, it's more despairing to watch something like this than say House of the Dead, which you know is going to be garbage because talented people are involved. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Excuse me, no talented people are in House of the Dead? Clint Howard is in House of the Dead, but sure, okay.
Sure. Ron Howard's brother. I forgot he was in that movie.
Now?
Yeah.
Star of The Ice Cream Man. Put respect on that name.
I do need to watch that movie. That is a VHS cover that is burned into my memory from childhood.
What the fuck is The Ice Cream Man?
Oh, it's a horror movie where he's a murderous ice cream man. And I saw it at a sleepover when I was in junior high. And the thing that I still remember to this day is he gives a child an ice cream with an eyeball on top. Like it's
oh my God. They allow these types of movies? What?
I know.
That's shocking. So twisted.
Did any of you see...
If only there was more family-friendly content like Novocaine.
Did any of you see, speaking of a boring movie, did any of you see The Iceman with Michael Shannon? Where Chris Evans at one point is a serial killer who's posing as an ice cream man, and there's like a shot of Michael Shannon going into the ice cream truck, and he's like, okay, kids, we're closed. And then he just opens up the freezer, and there's like fucking fudgesicles, but also like covering a dead body.
Oh man.
And I was just like, that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like,
that's a waste of fudgesicles. Oh man. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.